Hey everybody, it's last week from the table for August 25th, 2020. I'm your host, DM Gallibond. Alright, this is the show where we do a brief recap of the sessions from my Thursday night game and my Sunday afternoon game. And let's go ahead and get on with what happened last week. There were some parallels between the games, as you will see. All right. Sword Coast Chronicles, last Thursday night at 8 p.m., we opened with our heroes in prison. They had been captured at the end of the previous episode by the Cult of the Dragon, and they were being held as prisoners of Frulam Mondath and Langdadrosa Cyanrath at the cave where the dragon hatchery was. And so they had gone back to try to see something about the eggs. They saw that the surface camp was abandoned. And yet, when they went in the cave, there's still plenty of people there. And they wound up pulling the entire dungeon down on them, basically, and got themselves captured before they could escape. So the they had a series of vignettes, and I had to try to figure out how to do this. I put myself on a timer. I used a 10-minute timer, and I counted down the 10 minutes doing one-on-one with each player as they were being interrogated and questioned by their captors. And in between every one-on-one scene, I went back to the group and let the group have a couple of minutes of doing RP from the characters. And, if there were any checks they wanted to make, they could ask the mystic voice of the universe or, roll their dice and we would do checks on things and whatnot. But I thought that would kind of break it up a little bit. We spent the first half of the session doing that. Then we had our break. And during one of those interrogations, one of the PCs got a sending from the priest in Greenest, the priest of Shantae. It was like, hey guys, you've been gone for a while. What's going on? And it was right in the middle of when he was being interrogated. He gets this sending. And so he has to mentally answer, and he's like, hey, we've been captured. And then try to answer the question of his captors as well. And so once he got back to the cell with the others, he was able to tell them what was going on, tell them uh, how he could, the fact that there were people from Greenest that knew that they were captured and they might have a rescue coming. And then, sure enough, later on, that same cleric contacted other members of the party and figured out information about where they were, how they could get there. And then the last message that somebody got is, be ready, we're about 10 minutes out. And, there's riders from several towns coming. And so the end of the session was a big skills challenge. And the skills challenge was how to deal with all the chaos of all these people coming. And I didn't want to do a whole big mass battle where I had to track all the PCs on one side and all the NPCs that were their allies and all the NPCs that were against them. So I just set up a skills challenge and I said, all right, if the skills challenge succeeds, it means this. If it fails, it means this. And the skills challenge failed, but what that meant for the characters is that both of the local cult leaders, so both Frulum and Langdedrosa, not only survived the attack, but they escaped. And a significant number of the people that came to help them were killed or wounded. Um, the cult members were scattered because their leaders fled. But also, the other consequence of them failing is that the 3 black dragon eggs were destroyed. I had decided, knowing that it was a bit problematic or could be a bit problematic, but just kind of wanting to see how this group would RP the whole thing. I said that if they succeeded, they would be able to capture one of the 2 leaders. I was going to always have one of them be able to get away. That none of the people that came to rescue them got killed, and that the eggs would be intact. So I would put the fate of the eggs in the party's hands. Now, the players were pretty much thinking of playing um, to their characters, and so they pretty much said, "Well, if we had won, we would have destroyed those eggs anyway." Okay, that's fine, but dragons' eggs are extremely valuable, and there's always that one player that might be, "Ooh, could I hatch a could I hatch a dragon egg? And what would happen if I hatched a dragon egg, a black dragon egg? Would you know? It's like everybody in the cultural consciousness has Game of Thrones on the mind, and so I'm sure there would be a lot of people. Ooh, can I be like Daenerys? And will the dragons do what I tell them if they hatch and they imprint on me? And it's like they're D&D dragons. No, they're not going to do that. they're evil monsters. But while they are wormlings, and while you are more powerful than they are, you might you might be able to get them to follow your lead for a little bit. But eventually, they're going to realize, hey, I'm a lot bigger than this person. I'm a lot more powerful than this person. This person looks very tasty, and so, unfortunately, we didn't get to see what this party would do with that. But so they got freed, and that's kind of where we ended it. So there's the mop up to do when we start the session this coming Thursday. So join us, please, Thursday night on twitch.tv/Gallibond, and you will see what happens next in the story. And in the Walker of Waterdeep, we started yesterday's session or not yesterday, we started Sunday's session with a fight. And the fight was against a Scab Goliath. Now, a Scab Goliath is a monster out of the card set, or out of the block of cards from Innistrad. And it is a huge monster. In looking at the abilities it has and the challenge rating that it felt like it ought to be, I decided to use the template of a Mummy Lord. So I have my level 7 party fighting against a Mummy Lord, which is a CR15 monster that has some legendary actions. And you may think, oh, wow, that's really cruel to throw a monster that tough against a party of that level, because by itself, that's supposed to easily be a deadly encounter. Well, yeah, this is my game where the party is stronger than the average 7th level party. And so they are built to take on challenges like that. And you throw things at them like that, because then that really makes them fear for their characters' lives. If you just go by the book and you try to build encounters the way the book says you should build them, it's just going to be too much of a cakewalk, and they're going to get bored with the game. So, um, some of the things that this monster has really worked well and really helped it to get off to a strong start in the encounter. But a couple of things quickly turned the tide of battle. First of all, the the uh, the druid in the party landed fairy fire, which gave everybody advantage on their attacks. And then the barbarian uh, managed to get in one round, because he's 7th level and he gets 2 attacks. In one round, he got 2 crits against the thing with a great axe that deals extra damage like a corpse slayer. It's a corpse slayer weapon. So it deals extra damage against undead. So not only is it extra damage, but it's extra crit damage against the undead. So that one turn there really messed up the Mummy Lord, and he can take legendary actions at the end of the Barbarian's turn, but he can't do anything about it during the middle of the Barbarian's turn. And then the Cleric put a wall of fire right in this thing's area. And of course, because it's based on the Mummy Lord template, it is vulnerable to fire. So that wall of fire really wrecked it. And then it was actually the monk dealing unarmed strike damage, which is which at his level, he's got magical, or his unarmed strikes are considered magical attacks. So dealing unarmed strike damage actually took it down. But then, of course, they noticed that it didn't fall and just lay there as a corpse. It, kind of dissolved and then turned to dust, weirdly. Um, and of course, that's because it's got the template of a mummy lord. They don't know what that means yet, but some of them may, as players, some of them may, but their characters don't know what that means yet, because they have never encountered this. This is a monster from a different plane than they've ever been on. They've never been to Innistrad before. Well, as that fight got over with, they wound up getting captured. And who did they get captured by? They got captured by Geralf Sakani, by his sister Gisa Sagani, by a large demon, and they got captured by Gisa's pet undead, Scab Goliath, because the one they had fought was Geralf's pet Scab Goliath, and they learned that Geralf had called his Fluffy, and that Gisa called hers Pumpkin. So there's these 2 giant monstrosity, undead things, and the corpse stitchers. One of them calls his Fluffy, and the sister calls hers Pumpkin. So the party was pretty well, had used up a lot of their resources in fighting the Scab Goliath. So they really couldn't resist being captured. They got taken to the basement and thrown in a prison cell. On the way, they saw the same blood gift demon that they had fought uh, uh, in a town earlier, who had promised that the next time they met, he would have more powerful allies. And of course, he gloated that, hey, I told you I was going to have more powerful allies this time. And so they got thrown in prison, and the prison warden is a demonic taskmaster, which is another creature from Magic the Gathering, and the template is a chain devil. But again, just like um, in the game on Thursday, I built in some flaws to their character. So there was another human, a male, and the brother, Geralf, had the hots for that guy. That guy had the hots for the sister. So there was some jealousy going on between them, making things kind of all uncomfortable. Then the demonic taskmaster, who's the jailer, had actually been demoted by his boss, who's also the boss of the blood gift demon. And so the blood gift demon was, at least temporarily, put over the taskmaster, and that made the taskmaster mad. So the taskmaster couldn't do anything directly against the blood gift demon, but oh, he wanted to see that guy brought down. And he learned that the party had actually defeated a blood gift demon not long ago. So now he's required to be their jailer, but he's also kind of, oh, how'd you do it? I want revenge on this guy. And and so as they come up, as they start playing on his desire for revenge, they find some angles that they can use in order to, well, maybe this whole thing is not as hopeless as we thought it was a little while ago. And the cleric had, during the session, had kept getting this telepathic message from somebody who claimed to be a 2,000-year-old dwarf. Well, it turns out this 2,000-year-old dwarf is a dwarven hero that is trapped in a shield called the Shield of the Dwarven Lord. And the Shield of the Dwarven Lord is the scaling item that the cleric is going to get, because in this game the cleric is a warforged who was built by a dwarf, and he worships Moradin. And the thing with the hero in the Shield of the Dwarven Lord is he will only willingly serve somebody who is a faithful servant of one of the dwarven gods of the pantheon. Of course, Moradin is right up there, and this guy's a cleric of Moradin. So, yeah, his bases are all covered there. Um, so this is an interesting thing, but this shield has a real personality to it, and it's impatient like a dwarf, and it loves all the things that dwarves like, such as drinking and other types of things, and it kind of looks down its bearded, it looks down its beard at other non-dwarves, and it was really shocked when the Warforged showed up and was a Warforged instead of an actual dwarf, because he had somehow thought that Adamant was a dwarf. So, not that Adamant had not done anything to tell him that, but just somehow he had thought that Adamant was going to be a dwarf. So he's now got his item. And at the end of the session, they found out that a task that the blood gift demon wanted them to do was required to do by his boss, was going to require them to actually get the shield. And the blood gift demon wouldn't let them out of the prison, but he said, oh, I'm going to make my boss happy. I'm going to go grab this shield. Well, he goes to grab the shield, but the projection of his boss, which is a Lord of the Pit, which is another card out of Magic the Gathering. And I said that on some planes, the Lord of the Pit is known as Lord of the Pit. On other planes, they're known as a Balrog. Because if you think of the Balrog from um, the Lord of the Rings, whether you've seen the movie or whether you've read the book, that's kind of what the Lord of the Pit reminds you of. Is that huge, monstrous, demonic thing that is there, and so. The Balrog was none too pleased with his underling coming to interrupt his study of the shield. Also, the Balrog is more intelligent than the demon and realizes that the party was trying to dupe him. So instead of explaining the error of his ways, the Balrog just destroyed the demon. And when he got destroyed, that basically made the Taskmaster happy. So the Taskmaster is like, oh, well, I guess we got our revenge. Okay. Yeah, you guys can go. Because he didn't have any beef with them. It was this other guy that had a beef with him. And they need the shield to do the thing that their boss wanted them to do anyway. And it turns out that there was like a soliloquy that the boss had when they walked into the room where the shield was. Um, but because he's a projection, he really can't do anything to them because they are physical beings. They're not fiends like his underlings are. So he cannot exert control over them in the natural world. Uh, but they learned a little bit about the overall arc of the plot here, and he potentially sowed a little doubt in their minds as to the purity of their purpose and what they are, what they think they're trying to achieve versus what they may really be achieving. So once again, next week we will start with just sort of the mop up, cleanup of all that, and we will go forward. All right. Well, this has been last week from the table for August 25th. I've been DM Gallibond. If you like what we're doing here on this channel, please subscribe. Please like the videos. Please click the post notification bell so that you are notified every time a new video drops. And share the videos with your friends. Tell your friends about the channel so they'll come and they'll watch some too. Also, you can join us Sunday afternoons or Thursday evenings for live games. You can also join me on my Twitch channel on Monday night as I talk about a monster from the lore of D&D. We're getting very close to ending our time in Innistrad. Normally, I talk about a monster out of the lore of D&D, but as soon as we leave Innistrad on Sundays, I am going to do a special series where I profile the monsters that I converted from D&D for the Innistrad plane. And week by week, I'll go through what I did to convert them to Innistrad, what template I used, and how I modified them. It is something that works for my game, and my intent is not to say, oh, you should do this too, but it's just to show how when you go to customize a monster for your homebrew, you really have to consider the qualities of your homebrew game and the players and the party makeup, and you can't just use a standard template because either it will be a monster that's too tough, um, or it will be a monster that's too weak. What I generally have to do is I generally have to find a monster that theoretically on paper is just right and then tune it a little bit higher. I have discovered that if I start with a monster that's tuned a little bit higher, then it winds up being too tough. And it winds up being something that is that threatens to kill the party too quickly. And you don't want that. You want it to be a challenging fight, but you don't want it to be something that's boring, because by the end of the first round, half the party is tanking the floor. All right, that is that. Please remember, when you are at your gaming table, try to make your games memorable so that you can have tales from your table that you can share as well. Good night, everybody.